What is going on, comic fam? It's your boy, the bearded comic bro, and I am joined by my homie Tyler from Whack Comics. We're doing a special crossover event where we are bringing our YouTube channels together because we are going to interview Livio Ramondelli. Welcome back to the show, my friend.
Hey, nice to see you again.
Yeah, I know you've been on my show. I know you've been on Whack Comics because we are big fans of the Killock. So when you announced a new arc, Tyler and I were messaging each other back and forth like, holy cow, we got more of the Killock. Like, this is the greatest thing ever. Like, and I was like, I got to bring Livio back on the show. He's like, well, I want to be on it. I was like, well, okay.
Nice.
Yeah,
no, that's great. That's great to hear. Thank you. Yeah.
I met you at C2E2, and that was the first thing I asked you, and you're like, oh yeah, I don't know if I'm supposed to say anything, but there is going to be a sequel series. And I messaged Greg
Nice.
right away. He's like, I don't think I can tell you this, so don't say it out loud, but Livio hinted at it. So we can throw you under the bus now because it's out there.
Yeah,
totally
it's
cool.
out, so it's okay.
Nice. No, thank you so much for reading and kind of spreading the word on it too.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
I mean, it's not hard to do when it's such a great book. And, you know, when I bring a creator on, I always like to ask how they get into the comics and create it. And I've already done that with you. So we're going to skip those pleasantries and we're just going to talk the Killock here.
Nice.
We want to kind of set up though, if someone hasn't read the Killock before, so we're talking the first arc, not the new series that we're going to get into here in just a second.
Okay.
Kind of rehash it for us. You know, gang, if you haven't read it, this is a spoiler show because we're on the second arc now. Get your act together. So what is the Killock about? You know, where did that vision kind of come about and set the stage for where we're going now with the new series, the new arc?
Yeah, I was really interested in doing a story that would take characters from different walks of life that would never normally kind of be in the same room and really make them have to take care of each other. So I really like the kind of morally gray contrast of, you know, you have this moral soldier, but he's also really violent. Then you have this psychotic kind of engineer, but he comes from the really privileged area of their society. Then you have an addict who's like the lower class. And then you have a kid who's totally brand new to the world. Those four characters should never kind of be in the same situation, but that's the point, is that they've all been sentenced to this punishment where if one of them dies, they all die. And the first series is about them kind of racing to find what they think is a cure. And we're go into spoilers here for anyone who hasn't read the first series. First series ends with the artisan basically manipulating the group, and there is no cure, and he takes over the Wraith's body, and now they all are inside this kind of killing machine, and he's running the show. And that's what the sequel to Artisan Wraith is about.
Yeah. And
Well, we're already into deep spoilers now.
Yeah. I figured
I
I'd
already
jump
have
right in.
so when you came on Whack Comics, my one question I wanted to ask you was, I responded to the very end with a lot of emotions. I was both happy that they survived, but angry that the artisan had this horrible, like, demon-like plan. And now they're all stuck inside with them. It's almost like a bad thing. So how did you respond to when you were writing it? Like, what were your feelings, and how are the responses that you got from it?
Yeah, it's a good question. So with the first series, because I didn't know if there was going to be a sequel when I made that, you know, so I was hoping that, okay, if it's just ever these 6 issues, hopefully this ending is satisfying, where it's kind of like what I want the series to be in general, where it's kind of happy because they live, but it's dark because of what happens. And so, you know, it was kind of that thing. And I wanted it to be like that they all lived, you know, I wanted it to be, they do have a bit of a happy ending, like the kid in the labor class too, who really get kind of jacked up in the end, you know, that they both survive. And then I heard that from some people, and then some people were like really they wanted more of like, well, what happens next? And that was what I was hoping, which is that's where we are now. So yeah,
I love getting the chance to sit down with a creator, you know, and talk about a book where we've already read it now, so we can talk a little bit of like, what were you thinking? Why did you do this? Because really, usually it's like, oh, we can't spoil it because we want you to read this book. But
this is one of the first times I've been able to talk openly about spoilers, the first series, like the ending, because that's even going into the Artisan Wraith, you know, I want to kind of, hopefully that first issue, if you haven't read the first series, you can understand what's going on, but it's nice to finally be able to talk about it openly and spoil everything.
So when you were doing the first arc, you know, did you have this vision of where you wanted to take the Artisan right off the bat? You're like, I want him to have this plan. I want him to, or did this, as you were kind of processing and filling this out in your mind of like, oh, okay, this would be really cool to take it this route?
It evolved. I knew kind of what the ending was from the beginning, and I knew, the Artisan, but it became more layered over time. Like initially, my first concept was like, what if they're just so desperate? And honestly, this might have been a happier ending. What if they're just so desperate, the Artisan figures out that they can go into the Wraith's body and literally not, just they'll be safe there, But then I thought it was a lot more interesting to me, and especially if the Artisan is this intelligent, how does someone that intelligent get involved in a situation like this unless he chooses to be, So, and then I thought that really kind of gave the first series more momentum of like, and then also builds out the world where you're like, okay, this is story number one, but the Artisan has a plan that's going to go into this next one now.
Yeah. Well, because I think go ahead, Tyler.
One thing I really like about how you set everything up is you have great world building, and you don't even explain everything. And you'll talk about that in your YouTube series. And you have the Wraith, the anti-Wraith symbol, which we still haven't really gotten into, but you've brought it up multiple times. And I also love that you have like the spines of different giant robots and different beings. So do you have future plans for that? Or is that just something that you love to have little Easter eggs of things that aren't explained yet?
Thanks. Yeah, no, there's definitely future plans. Like both of those things are covered in the sequel. And you get a lot more information about like what I like about my favorite sequels of all time too, are like movies that both move the story forward, but also fill in the backstory of what the world was, like Empire Strikes Back and like Godfather Part 2, I love because you get a huge portion of the past story you didn't even know about, and you get the future. And so that's what this sequel has for sure, is that you learn a lot more about like what was the universe before, and then why do the Wraiths hate that symbol so much? So you get a lot more about that. And like, I love world building. Like that's my favorite thing. So it's, finding that balancing act of how much do you tell and how much do you just let the story feel natural, But yeah, no, I'm glad you like that stuff, because I like it too, and I hope people want to see more of the world.
Yeah. And if you guys don't know, if you're watching this, what Tyler's referencing is, Livio, you do a YouTube channel where you kind of do audio commentary of your book, which like it's kind of like the Blu-ray extra features, the director's cut. I think that's really cool. Like, why do you do that?
Yeah, it literally because I like listening to Blu-ray audio commentaries. That's my favorite thing. Like I love listening to those. I learned so much. And then I was like, why don't more comic creators do this? Like I would love to hear the thoughts about making something. Like I would love to hear like Frank Miller talk about Dark Knight Returns for like 2 hours. I mean, so I was like, well, I really like, I just wanted to do one, because it's one of my favorite things, and I've learned a lot from listening to them. So yeah, so I'm glad you listen to them.
Yeah, it's great. Just all of the added detail, like I was mentioning before, just the littlest things that you say, oh, I thought this guy might be thinking this, so that's why I had him do this. And it's like, oh, I didn't necessarily get that from reading it, and maybe you wouldn't, but when you say that, then it makes me think like that makes perfect sense. Cool. It just ties the story in even better.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, it really does, because there's something about, your story stands alone on itself. Like you don't need to listen to the audio commentary to, enjoy the story. But what I think it does is it enhances it. I heard an interview like, recently about Tom King talking about Strange Adventures, and I read this, the series all the way through. But then when I heard him explaining why he made choices that he made, I was like, oh my gosh, I appreciated it even more so. Yeah. So I think that's what director's cuts, and that's what, getting to hear kind of why you went the route you went, and, kind of explaining what you did in a book, I think really helps, even though it stands alone, because how many movies have those that people don't listen to or watch anyways? Yeah. But there's such a nice feature when you get that.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. I love that, with movies too, where, you watch the actual movie, and then if you want the deeper insight and, seeing how something's made. Like I know some people that don't like watching, they don't like seeing how anything's made. They just like the final product, but I love being able to absorb like why certain choices happen. And then also like deleted ideas you had, talk about stuff that you were going to do and decided not to. So
yeah, comic nerds like the extra stuff.
How
can we not?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I noticed as I was watching your audio commentary, because we're mentioning it too, because it literally dropped like 20 minutes before Tyler and
Yep.
I have you on the show.
That's like
And
a
Tyler's
sadistic
messaging
test.
me ferociously, like, have you listened to this yet? I'm like, no, but I'm going to.
Oh my God. I'm sorry. I did not mean to do that. That's like a sadistic, like Squid Games game. Like, listen to this right now.
Like,
They have
let's see
just
how
enough
good
time
your
to listen to
research
this.
is.
Let's
And we're like, challenge accepted. We got
God.
it.
Well,
But what
thank
I
you. You
did
guys are
notice,
troopers for listening.
what I did notice is I saw that you had B Ward helping you edit it and commentate it. And
Yeah.
I know Brian because of
Oh.
your podcast, not your podcast, but you coming on my show last time talking about his podcast.
Oh,
with
nice. Yeah.
Rhea, who did all the psychiatrist analytics of the characters back there. So I was like, and then I've literally now, since we last talked, listened to those two talk about Batman
Awesome.
the animated series
That's great.
all
Yeah.
the way through. And then I had Dre on my show talking. I was like, I had to bring you on.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, they're I love Brian and Dre. They're two of my good friends, and it's really nice to professionally work together. Like you said, Dre did the profiles, and Brian's also looking. If there's any creators out there that want to do audio commentaries, Brian is more than happy to do it. So yeah, I highly recommend him. He's great. So yeah.
Which, as we're leading into the new series, the new arc that we're gonna hop into here, is that something that we might still get a little bit of the profiles? Is that
there is one coming, an important one coming.
okay?
So yeah, the nature of the sequel is different because it's a much bigger story than the first one. It's 7 issues and it's like jam packed. There's some pages or some issues are longer than like in the first series, issue 5 was the longest, but in this one there's a lot. And so the nature of how much extra material you can have in the back is more limited. But then also they worked well in the first series because whenever a profile showed up is when you got to an important like kid comic or artisan comic. But the sequel, you don't really get all the answers until kind of the end. So you can't really spoil. It's like when you choose to analyze a character, it's usually when something really giant has happened. So yeah.
Well, one thing I really like is when a series is a random amount of issues, because it makes me feel like that was the amount that needed to be, instead of maybe 6 issues and 3 of them didn't really need to be there, or 12 issues and a bunch of them were just kind of like filler, maybe only one little thing at the very end. Was there a reason from the very beginning that this was going to be 7 like the whole time?
It was just kind of breaking out the story and mapping out where things were going to go. But yeah, I feel the same way. Like I hate when there's sort of filler issues or episodes where you're like, God, this didn't even need to be seen. Like get to the good stuff. But I hope that every issue of this feels like you're getting a giant new chunk of the story. There's nothing like that issue didn't do anything, Yeah.
Mentioning that, this first issue of the new arc, my favorite character already was the Cloaker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, what an awesome power, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Can you tell us a little about how you thought of the cloaking robot?
Yeah, I knew I wanted to have the sequel start with a new group of characters, the Resolve class, which was like the class that cleans up messes. I always knew the sequel would be like looking into that world. And I like this notion that there's like this buddy cop kind of element to it, where the Lurk, who's the cloaker, he sort of trained the other Resolve class, but over time, the cloaking gives you this sort of Alzheimer's effect where he's gotten worse over time. And now she's the really capable one that has to look after like this grumpy old man robot. And I like that idea that he has a really lethal power, but his personality is sort of just kind of gone off the rails a little bit. I thought that was kind of a funny, and then I also like, I like with characters showing that they've already had a story before you meet them. So even though these two are not in the first series, they've had a history of like working together a long time that you hopefully get from that first issue.
Yeah. Well, and you did such a great job in the first series of making characters that are robots feel, like humans, like there's emotion to it. And reading that right off the bat, like you feel like that relationship between, the new characters that you've created. And there's almost this like almost sense of like, you feel for the Lurker, the Cloaker, like, oh my goodness, like this sucks, of like the more he seems to utilize his power that is awesome and is really sweet, which we see in this issue, which we'll talk about. Like that it deteriorates his mind even more and it causes issues. So like I've always appreciated your writing style of making, non-human characters be empathetic and having this kind of passion for like, I care about the characters, even though it's a robot.
That's great. Yeah, that was my hope, was that it was a really human kind of story, even though it's because I never understood why. I mean, if you look at like a Pixar movie, people invest in cars and toys. I mean, people have no trouble in a movie like that. So I'm like, why can't a comic book do that? I just it made complete sense to me that you can have empathy for anything if you just make it emotional and human. Yeah.
Yeah, so the very first series, I'm not going to repeat the very first line, but I took a picture of it and put it on Instagram. But the artisan says something very rude to another robot, and like just right away, you could just feel so much personality, even in the robot that we only see for a couple panels, really. You could just get a sense of his reaction to what the artisan says.
Thanks.
I love that.
Thank you. Yeah, I was like, it's a risky move to start a comic like that, but I was like, well, I like the notion that you start with like these big sci-fi Arctic shots, and then the first thing you hear is such what you don't expect, where it's like just like this asshole walking into a bar, like I like that notion. So yeah,
because the robot that he's even saying what he's saying to looks like, if I was to classify it as like a Winnie the Pooh of robots, so it's like the sweetest, most endearing robot, and you're just like, oh wow, you're just throwing him under the bus right off the bat.
Yeah, he's immediately terrible. Like I because I like characters that are unlikable. I know some people really don't like that, but I'm like, just because a character's horrible doesn't mean that they're not charming in some way. Like so yeah, no, it's definitely fun to do that.
Right after that, we get to see it. So it's like storytelling before anything ever happens. We get to see through the artisan's eyes of basically he's deciding how he could kill this robot or in what ways he's defective. And I loved that. That was so cool. So you just immediately see how savage the artisan is before he's ever even done anything.
Yeah. I wanted to kind of show how that they all have strengths and weaknesses, where the artisan is, very lethal, but then later on there's that, fist fight with the laborer, and he's physically weak, like he has like surgical sort of precision, but he can just be overpowered really easily, And so, yeah, I mean, I like that kind of contrast of giving them all like strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, that reference that Tyler is mentioning reminded me very similar to like the Robert Downey Jr. Sherlock Holmes, where like when he's about to do something, you see they explain it in his mind of like, okay, I'm gonna do this, and then in 3 seconds he's gonna do this, I'm gonna do this, because like you're always just like, I love to see that process of like, rather than just show it, we're gonna actually tell you like how this character is thinking it through, and you really see that with the artist in here of like, he's very meticulous with like, because he's such a smart character, is like there is thought behind every single thing he says and does.
Yeah, that was what I wanted, was like he's so intelligent, and that's why his kind of frustrations with the world and why he's so rude and stuff is that anything that's kind of a waste of his time, he has no patience for. So that's why he's so frustrated by the kid, because the kid just is kind of like this thing that's a risk in his way. And the kid is also like, his plan in the first series, the one thing he didn't count on was the kid.
Right.
There was like a last minute switch out. So that really kind of threatened his life now, So, yeah.
I love I think it's the 4th issue or 5th. I'm not 100% sure. It doesn't matter. When he's talking to the other artisan, and then you see the kid come in and stab the artisan, the opposite. I don't remember if he had a name, but then we turn back. The artisan's like congratulating the kid, like, you finally did something right. And the kid's like, I did good. And he's just mangled. And I remember my heart just broke. I've never felt that way, like very rarely reading a comic book. Like that felt like I was watching a movie. And one of my favorite characters was dying. Like that was awful in the best way.
Nice. Thank you. I heard that from quite a few people that was pretty affecting. And I was like, I mean, that's great to hear. And you always feel bad too, because you're like, you want people to enjoy the story. And sometimes you just have to put in rough stuff to get it to make a rich story,
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's so cool to hear, though, kind of the behind the scenes of how you process it. And you were talking about how the artisan had to be the character who was just kind of straight off the bat like, listen, you're not going to like me. But I think because you set that stage and you had characters that complemented it well, right? Like it wasn't a complete series where like there wasn't any redeemable characters, or I think there was empathy for all the other characters except for the artisan, and that dichotomy really works well to have both of them, those personalities in that.
Yeah, thanks.
So let's focus. We hinted at it, we kind of briefly touched about the new series, and I know you said you kind of wanted to create these new characters. I really want to know the process for you. What was it like of, we all know the deal with comic books. Like you have an idea, you create it, and you hope that people like it. So you kind of want to tell your story with the hopes of maybe telling more. So like, what was that process for you of telling the Killock, something that you've been, working on for so long, to then like, when you finally knew, like, I'm going to get to tell more stories in this world. Like, where was that process like for you? And when did you kind of like know, like, oh, cool, I can go here and tell certain stories?
Yeah, it's a good question. So when the first series got officially greenlit by IDW that it was going to get published, because there was no guarantee that was going to happen. I had finished the whole series. All it was all done by the time they greenlit it. So it had an ending and everything. And that day, I remember I was really excited. I had no idea people were going to like it, but I knew it was going to come out. And I was like, okay, if I was going to get to do a second one, like what would it be? So I started like really generally rough writing of like, what would that look like, and just chipping away at it. And then things evolved over time. But then once the first series came out and was getting, thankfully, like a nice response, then I really started working on the sequel. I was like, well, okay, what is it really? And then the only silver lining of the pandemic for me and the quarantine was that I had all this time at home. So I finished the sequel much quicker than the first series, because I was working, I wasn't going out of town. I wasn't hanging out at night really without other people. So I was like, yeah, I got it done, within a year or something, which is that's crazy compared to the first one. Because the first one was like 4 years or something around other work. So yeah. And then now it's all done. So
Yeah, how different was it writing this? Probably more traditionally, I guess, compared to the other one that you just wrote, finished, and then just dropped on their lap and said, "Hey, this is already done. Do you like it?"
Yeah. Well, it's funny because like even with the first series, you're like, it's not a guarantee you get to do a second one,
Yeah.
but thankfully, they were like, they wanted to do it, and that was great. So then it's a matter of agreeing on the length, because initially they were like, we want to do 6 issues again because they wanted the trades to look similar. And then you get into the printing cost where it's like a trade paperback with 7 issues just weighs more. So that makes it more expensive. That makes shipping more expensive. But I told them, I was like, it has to be 7 issues. I'm like, this is just what the story is. Like I've mapped it all out, So that was the big thing. And then they were really cool about it. And so yeah, got to do 7.
Awesome.
It's so cool because to hear that kind of process of like and it's nice because if people don't know, you do the art and you do the writing of this book, which in and of itself is phenomenal because of your artwork that you've done on Transformers. Like it's to do a book, I'm always just blown away when I see someone like there's the artist and the writer. And you had someone else letter the Killock, and I see like you brought someone in to help edit this one. So you expanded your team from 2 to 3, which is really cool for comics.
Yeah. It's cool. I mean, it's good to have other eyes on this because, when you make this thing in a vacuum, you're like, I don't know if anyone's going to like this or are they going to find it funny? And then it's amazing how many you still miss typos or whatever. It's crazy how 7 people can read something and all miss the same typo. But yeah, it's good to have other eyes on it for sure.
That means 5 of them weren't really reading it. Send it our way next time. We won't miss them.
We'll prove it for you.
I remember I proofread a buddy's comic and I missed its really obvious typo. And I was like, man, I was looking for typo. I don't know how this stuff happens, but yeah.
Yeah, your mind just like fills in the blank.
Yeah, for sure.
Because it's like, oh, I know what it's supposed to say.
Yeah.
You go there.
Yeah.
So let's talk the second series here a little bit. Where was this character design for, there are 2 characters that you introduced to us? Because I'm really excited that you went the route of expanding on the story that we've already, kind of gotten familiar with. And, we don't see the Artisan Wraith very much, which I think helps out in issue 1. If you didn't read the first one, you're okay. Nice world building for it. So where was this kind of character design for the 2 protagonists in the first issue?
Yeah, it's a good question. And that was definitely intentional. Like I wanted this first sequel to focus on new characters, and you sort of see them reacting to the events of the first series. Like they basically they're told what happens the same way you sort of tell new people that didn't read the first book. And then I wanted you to kind of hopefully get attached to these 2 new characters and worry about them, because if you know what they're going up against, it's dangerous. And their design, I'm a big believer that characters should be really easy to like a kid I feel like can draw an AT-AT, it's like a camel, it's like a TIE fighter. Like I think really simple shapes are strong. So with these 2 new characters, I knew I wanted a contrast. So one is like short and white. The other one is tall, thin, and purple. I wanted immediately, those are character colors we didn't really see in the first series. Like the kid's kind of that color, but one of these guys immediately looked different, and then, just kind of expanding out the world and, seeing new planets and stuff. I really like doing that and going back to world building.
I have to ask, because reading the first issue, how much fun was it to draw that arm racing? Because holy buckets, you go buck wild with some action in that.
It was fun. Yeah, I knew that first issue would have this kind of action scene where you see them demolish, I wanted them to operate in the underworld. So you would see, weapons deals and that kind of stuff, and then them wreaking havoc. I wanted to show how dangerous the Resolve class is too. They're sort of the quote heroes of this sequel, but they are also operating in a real kind of violent world. So yes, that was fun to do.
So Livio, what do we got to do to make action figures happen with this line? Because if it's a Kickstarter that we have to retweet, promote, what do we have to do? I'm asking you. We're gonna get the word out, because Tyler and I will do it to make it happen.
That would be amazing. That's definitely on my mind. I would love to do that. I think it's just a matter of finding out the cost. Really the Kickstarter would tell is how much money can we raise, and what is the audience? Because I was talking to someone else who told me to do it, and he was saying that even if people don't read the comic, people just like cool robot figures, that they could kind of stand on their own. But I did actually map out what each character would come with, I like it because I like accessories and stuff. So I did kind of plan out, so yeah.
Obviously this is probably a long shot, but there's even some cool robots in the first one, that the one in the alley, the really creepy one. And there's just so many cool designs and creepy moments, and I love all of it.
Oh, good. Yeah, I thought about should it be a 2-pack, the Wraith and the Kid come together?
Oh, that'd be perfect.
I thought that'd be kind of a nice, even if you didn't read the comic, I think visually that just looks like a scary robot taking care of a little friendly robot. But yeah, trust me, that I will definitely enlist you guys for help if we can do it.
We will be on the front lines of the Killock toy promotional material.
Nice. That's awesome.
So you do a lot of stuff with Transformers. I know that's kind of, when I first brought you on, you said that's kind of how you were discovered. You were drawing Transformers, and people were getting to see kind of your work and at Comic Cons and stuff. How much has drawing Transformers helped you in this process of drawing the Killock? Because drawing robots are completely different than drawing people and their faces, but I think there's a special skill that takes though to make it, to see the emotion, to see the action stuff that is not, too cluttered in the panel. How did Transformers kind of help shape your design of the Killock?
Yeah, it was definitely useful to be on Transformers for so long, because not just getting better as an artist, but dealing with color balances, because that's with robots it's hard, because it's sort of like a bag of Skittles being dumped everywhere, where it's so red, neon, yellow robots next to each other. They can look really ugly really quick, so yeah. And then also Transformers are really complicated characters, the design wise, where Killock characters I really intentionally wanted to make them more simple, so So yeah, and then it's just kind of like, like for example, like Soundwave is one of my favorite designs, and Shockwave. Like I love the faces where it's like, and Optimus Prime, but like you don't really have a human mouth and stuff. And so that's kind of, the Wraith is sort of an evolution of that, where he has, these three lines and that's his face. I like that stuff a lot. And I think that you can get a lot of emotion out of those faces too. I think just by tilting the camera, you can see if the Wraith is sad or angry or whatever. So yeah, I think it was a natural evolution from Transformers.
Yeah, I actually have never read any Transformers books, but I now own a bunch of Transformers covers that you've done.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Just from reading the Killock and loving your art so much in that.
Oh, thanks. That's what I hope too, is that new readers would come to the Killock that didn't even know Transformers. So
well,
yeah.
it's funny because I was setting up my display back here, and as you hopped on, I was like, I had to buy this as soon as and I only got exposed to you because of your work on the Killock, and I'm like, well, holy buckets, yeah, I'm gonna have you do Optimus Prime, and you the little sketch there, like it's just so cool. And I think that's what's great about comics, right? Like projects that you've worked on for so long that people are like, hey, are rediscovering stuff and rediscovering a love. And I think that's just really neat to see, with your artwork and your writing style, bringing that to life.
Nice. No, thank you so much. Yeah, it was a blast. Like I always wanted to try doing an original creator-owned world that I created myself. So it's been really wonderful.
Before we let you go, I gotta ask, of all your characters from the Killock, who's your favorite to draw?
I think probably the Wraith. The Wraith's my favorite, I think, and then personality wise, I think the Wraith, the Artisan, and this new Lurk, the Cloaker, those are probably my three favorites to write and work on.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, I've got a good feeling about the Lurk with all your talk about it.
Oh, good. Yeah. He's sort of the heart of the new series. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, it adds a lot of depth to, the character development of, he's dealing with stuff, right? And utilizing his powers is causing more issues, and what does that do? And that dynamic then between the two of the main protagonists, I think is just really it's something that it's going to be a fun ride to join on.
Cool. Thank you. Yeah, I'm hoping, I'm excited for people to see it. It's a much bigger story than the first one. It really kind of opens the universe more. So
I don't know if you've ever read or watched Invincible, but you talking about the Lurk really reminds me of Monster Girl.
I read some Invincible like when it was first coming out, but I haven't watched the show or kept up with the comic, but I remember liking it.
Yeah, because Monster Girl, just not that it matters, but she can turn into a monster and it de-ages her. So if she keeps doing it and doing it and doing it, she'll turn into a baby.
Oh, interesting.
Over time. So it's like the same thing, but baby versus losing your mind.
Interesting. Yeah, those I like that idea a lot, where it's the strength is also the weakness kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then with the Lurk, I like this notion that he's addicted to cloaking, that it's really fun to be a cloaker, but you're hurting yourself by doing it.
So. Yo, and if you don't understand what he means by being fun, being a cloaker, that's because you didn't read issue 1 of this new arc. Because dude, I'm telling you, that arm raising, what he does in there, I'm just like, I messaged Tyler, I was like, holy cow, like
nice. I'm glad you liked it. Yeah, I love making it.
So well, I always like to let the creators talk up. Obviously, this series, when we're recording it, issue 1's come out, issue 2's on the horizon. Is this really what you're focusing on? Do you got other, irons in the fire?
This is my focus now for sure. I'm working on other creator-owned stuff. Like I really, really want to do that. So other stories and different unrelated to Killock.
Okay.
But yeah, the sequel is definitely the thing I want to kind of push the most right now. So it's monthly. The second one's out, I think like April 9th or something. But
nice.
Yeah.
And I know this is 7 issues. You got some stuff, percolating that if you're allowed to keep telling more the Killock stories, is this kind of, you got more expansion on this universe?
Yeah, for sure. And I think not to tease too much, but the way the second one ends, I think will tell you what the future is going to be. So yeah.
Nice.
Without knowing how this ends, basically in your YouTube video, you were talking about how you may even be able to do other Killock stories where it's just like almost a branch off.
Yeah.
Like Rogue One style of how it connects to Star
Mm.
Wars. I'm really looking forward to that if that ever comes to be. I love this world and I love the idea of the Killock, so I'd love to see more of it.
Thanks. Yeah, the idea I want to do is an anthology, like a 50-page or 70-page one-off that would be kind of these Twilight Zone episodes of other characters that have the kill lock and what their experience is like. And some of them would have horrific endings, and some would have happy endings, but it would be just the nature of the kill lock lends itself to see like, well, what is other people's experience like with it, So yeah, so
That
I definitely
sounds
like
amazing. Yeah.
Thanks. And I thought it'd be cool too for also the world building is like, set it in different time zones or timelines and stuff too. So
Yeah, the kill lock lends itself to so many things because if you're with the right people or the wrong people, things can go really good or really bad.
yeah, like I'll tease like one idea I have. I don't even know what the ending to the story is, but one of the ones I want to do is it's just one of the robots won't let the other three leave a room. And he's like, listen, we're safe in here. You're not allowed going outside. And it's about the breakdown of like, you can't keep us in this room forever. And I think that's just an interesting idea. So yeah.
The psychology right there on my mind's going like all around, twirling around, like, where is it gonna go? What would you do with this?
I realized multiple times in this interview I've said people because these robots really do feel like people. I don't even think of them as robots. Like you see them and they look great and they're robots, but their personalities are so much deeper than that.
Cool. Nice. No, I'm glad to hear that. Yeah.
Yeah. And and I'm glad that you get to see that, if someone can kind of figure out how to, get around the kill lock, that other people will as well. And I think that's an interesting dynamic that you set up here in this first arc. And I'm excited to see kind of where that, where you explore with that as well. So
thanks. Thank you. Yeah. It's hopefully if I've done my job right, it's a good kind of exploration or like evolution of the world and, brings it forward.
I mean, I know it's not very much, it's probably not profitable, but you're doing a good enough job for us. And like, so it's the two of us were there for it. So
good. Thank you.
I mean, just keep doing it at least. And like, we're there.
Just for us.
Yeah. No, I love making it. Yeah.
I'm sure people don't get in the comics to make it for two people. So that's why we preach the gospel of the kill lock. But
no, I appreciate it. No, spreading the word is good. I mean, like the first one too, I had no idea if anyone was going to read it at all. So like the fact that it got a nice response is really great. So
it took me all of like half of the first issue. Like I always recommend books or don't recommend books. You don't go back and read the whole Killock. Read the first issue. You're going to be sold on the first issue. And I don't even need to recommend anymore because you're just going to keep going.
That's awesome. That's great.
Yeah.
Nice.
So as we're wrapping up, Livio, how can people follow along with you of what you're creating if they want to know and stay up to date with what's going on?
Yeah, my Instagram and Twitter is Livio Ramondelli. So Instagram is probably where I'm most active, and I do my announcements and stuff on there. So yeah.
So I will have the links to social media there. I'll also have the links to the YouTube channel. I highly recommend reading the issues and then listening to the audio commentary because you get so much insight there, which is really cool to see. So man, thank you so much for taking some time out of your day to talk about the Killock with me and Tyler. So this
it's great to talk to you guys. Yeah, thank you so much.
Awesome. So gang, with that being said, also go support Tyler, part of Whack Comics. If you are not familiar with his channel, his links will be in the description of this video as well. Thanks, Tyler, for doing this interview with me. This was a lot of fun.
Of course, it was great.
Yeah,
love the Killock. Can't wait for more.
That's awesome. Thank you, guys. Really nice talking to you.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, gang, hopefully you can find some time to curl up, grab a book, and nerd out. Peace.